this is a tremendously important question, and it ties into the whole concept of solutions, because there are some people who, not being truly familiar with our work, give themselves away by, coming to us and saying, hey, we know the problems, why don't you offer any solutions? And the first thing that always tells me is that they're not familiar with my work, because my work is filled with solutions. Even to talk of man doing his inner homework and dealing with his emotions, just like we spoke on the first program, is that not solutions? Even to talk about legal means rather than political means of working towards greater freedom, and mentioning the breaking away from the federal government and the education into these matters of how the whole federal systems are set up. I mean, we have solutions. We're always mentioning solutions. But what you're asking specifically is about the difference between a reaction to what is taking place and a response to what is taking place. Then when you go a little deeper, you have this concept of anger. And a lot of people will talk about anger being a very negative emotion. You see, because again, as I insist in all my work, we've been told a pack of lies about all the emotions. We have a very paltry grasp of what emotion is, and the majority of Western people are not in any way in relationship or in contact with their own emotions. So all you get is the play of words. You get the play of words back and forth, and the cliches. Oh, anger's wrong, hatred's wrong, compassion this, compassion that. Righteous indignation is better than anger, and so forth and so on. And so you get this bandying around of words without any true, really substantial meaning. And I can give you a good example about that. The family who has had their sons and daughters brought back in body bags from meaningless wars, who've had their children raped by pedophile priests, who've had their entire family business, eradicated by, say, the federal system, who've been browbeaten by police, who've suffered injustice in court, who've had everything taken from them and robbed from them, who have had no sense of justice. And my mind goes back to the Jack Lemmon movie, Missing. People need to watch that and talk about whether this man should have righteous indignation or whether he should have had anger, you see? So we're talking about responses here. So it's very easy to talk about righteous indignation when the acts of confiscation and acts of extortion haven't reached your doorstep yet, or when war and turmoil and murder and rape and violation and injustice haven't reached your comfortable, middle-class doorstep. Then you hear talk about righteous indignation. Well, people are sipping their wine and lighting their cigars and talking in totally abstract and general terms. But just like the Jack Lemmon character in the movie Missing, or just like the Howard Beale character in Network, when you truly see, or not just see, but have involvement, direct participation with the kinds of violations that are going on, like people in my country, and I can say this without even taking sides, the enormous atrocities where people are kneecapped, people are shot in their beds, women and children are blown to pieces. And you're telling me, that you have righteous indignation? I mean, what am I meant to do? Look that up in some dictionary or something to get an interpretation of what that means? You're mad as hell. And that's what is an actual, sane, rational response to a violation that is taking place on any level. When you bring a family member into the casualty ward of a hospital and they say, sorry, your wife or husband or son or daughter died on our operating table. You know what I mean? And just people need to sit and think about all the atrocities that we read about. Are you going to talk to me about having righteous indignation? Or say you're made ill at work through some industrial disease, through exposure to mercury or some, like in Bhopal in India, or like in Chernobyl in Russia, and like there's so many other industrial diseases that are going on, and then slowly we find out, and you have organ breakdown in your body, and I mean any of the various horrendous injustices that have taken place. We just go home and say we have righteous indignation about these injustices. This is the luxury of fools. And when you take it to the macro level of the crimes that the British government is responsible for, and when you take it to the level of local government and what they're responsible for, and we have a world coming down. We have police surveillance. We have police monitoring crowds, and whether you're supporting or not mass movements and mass demonstrations. Let's also notice the fact that anger is so taboo in our society. Isn't that one of the reasons why we have such a police control and such a watchdog jackboot control at these demonstrations? Is because that's what the society is so afraid of. That's what the Big Brother is so afraid of. They'd love you to have righteous indignation. They'd love you to work within the political pigsty. This is what they're this is what they're betting on, because they have nothing to fear from that. So they make sure that is completely policed out of existence. And this whole idea of pacifying and having man have a very, very negative relationship with his own emotions, so that he is completely misunderstanding them, and that even a man who has true anger is a threat to society. They don't know what to do with him, because nobody in this Western world, as I've said in so many presentations and writings, has a faintest idea what a true, actual emotion is. They're not in relationship with it. They can't express it. And if they do express it, everyone thinks of them as a complete and utter nut. But to get back to the heart of your question, you heard me subdivide the question of anger, and that's because I've thought about anger. I've thought about these emotions a lot. And I've watched them in operation. And I will say that when it comes to anger, yes, of course, there is a dysfunctional acting out of anger. That's a no-brainer, obviously. And that falls under the category of what I refer to as always as the red flame of anger, because it's the anger that is infantile. It's the anger that appears when people's ego needs, their own narcissistic, basic ego needs, you see, are thwarted. And then they strike out like infants do. Obviously, that's not the anger that Michael Tsarion is addressing, like somebody who's come to this, 5 minutes ago. Obviously, that's not what I'm talking about when I'm speaking about the specific response that very few books and very few films have ever dealt with properly. And those who do are generally misunderstood. Just like when I'm talking about these things, it's misunderstood. And so, what is this thing about the warrior? What is this thing about the worry that we have about vengeance and justice? Now, the whole world is owed this because of the violations that have been done. And as I've said time and time again, mass placarding, mass demonstration with a bunch of people who have a very thin understanding of what is really going on is obviously not going to do anything. But a very conscientious, passionate, direct response from an educated group of people is the absolutely most frightening thing to the establishment. And that comes under what I refer to as the blue flame of anger, which is an intellectual anger, which is a response to being under attack. It is no different than the operations of the immune system and the operations of the white blood cells, the lymphocytes and the white corpuscles, when you're under attack. These emotions arise for certain reasons. In my work on, psychic vampirism and other subjects, we get into this even deeper about certain emotions arising for certain reasons. And so, until society has sort of cultivated that and basically, laid down this very tepid, very bourgeois sort of righteous indignation line, which is, of course, again, born out of either a completely thin understanding of what the facts are, or it's born out of the fact that the individual who has this righteous indignation is actually part of the problem and it will never be able to do anything about it. This is one of the reasons why people have this very cool and cynical response, is because they're actually either part of the problem, or they're never in a month of Sundays ever going to get with what is really about real change. And if you examine these people's lives, as I've said many times, instead of finding the anger and the criticism and the passion, what you find is a tremendously wet, damp, cold cynicism, a completely selfish, narcissistic cynicism, which throws water on real action. And you find these people in society, and you find them very much put off by the work that people like myself do. They're always talking about it being dark. They're always talking about it being pessimistic. I'll tell you what dark is. Dark is ignorance. In fact, many people have even philosophers have said that there is a correlation between darkness and ignorance. And believe me, those who speak against and think what the work that people like myself is doing is somehow dark and spooky and weird and a bit strange, these are individuals who are living themselves in a cloud of darkness, haven't the faintest idea what real change means. These are the very individuals who are going and out of their misunderstandings, voting in the worst tyrants possible and trying to sort of cop out of the real work that needs to be done. And, you don't find this in those people who've had true violation in their life, true injustice. You do not hear them talking in these terms, in these passionless terms. And again, I refer people to the movie Missing with Jack Lemmon. Go and get that movie and watch it and see, put yourself in that character's position. Or get out Brotherhood of the Bell. We have that movie, it's on Google and YouTube, Brotherhood of the Bell with Glenn Ford, you see? Or V for Vendetta. And look at the movies, what these scriptwriters are trying to tell you about this incredible subject. And it's all, like we said in the first show, and it's a good question to open, what we're talking about in this particular interview, is all, again, is articulated to man's own relationship psychologically with his own emotions. If he doesn't understand his own emotions, if he doesn't understand why these emotions arise and what is emotion, and how many levels there are of these different kinds of emotions, if he just believes what he's been told by the spin doctors, then obviously he's never going to have the right tool for the right occasion. It's just as simple as that.